Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Today, we are going to be continuing on with our V-BT10 Phantom Dragon Aeon set. And basically, we're going to be covering Spike Brothers today. Spike Brothers is usually a deck that, in my opinion, is not that great in Standard usually. But I think that, you know, this time they got some decent support. They got some pretty good support in the form of Rising Nova. And Rising Nova is the new ace card, which is basically a G-Series clone or a G-Series retrain for V-Series, and basically it allows you to, when you ride it, you get to get both versions of Force. So you get to get Force 1 and Force 2, which allows you to put out a lot of pressure. You can obviously still do the stuff that the previous Spike Brothers decks used to do, where you're having multi-attacks and moving your markers and all that stuff. And then that's also because of Rising Nova, because it gets through Soul Blast 1 and get the ability of 2 of your rearguard grade 3s. So you basically just place these rearguards that are supposed to be on Vanguard on the rearguard circle, and then if you have Rising Nova on your Vanguard circle, you can give the abilities of your rearguard grade 3s to your Vanguard. So it becomes really, really good and really, really pressuring and hard for your opponent to deal with. But we're going to get right into the deck here. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell button so you don't have to miss any future Cardfight Empire content. Also, be sure to click the like button if you like the video, and comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the deck or your build. How did you guys deal with, you know, building around this build? For me, I just had a little more defense because I'm more of a defensive player, so I wanted to make sure that I was protected, because you do run a lot of grade 3s in this build, and your hand can become pretty clunky sometimes. So I tried to go the opposite route of that and make my hand as less clunky as possible, and just actually try to survive, because you only need, like, I think 2 or 3 good turns to kill your opponent in this deck, or you pretty much die. So I wanted just enough defense to keep me alive for, you know, keep me afloat for long. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below, and also be sure to check out that join button next to the subscribe button if you guys would like to become a member of the channel, and check out my second channel, Let's Plays Animes, which has to do with anime, animation, and video games, down in the description down below. But we're gonna get right into today's video. So Spike Brothers, yep, so this is Rising Nova. So basically starting off with our grade 3s, which we're going to be covering quite a bit of grade 3s in this deck. Like I said, we're running a lot of grade 3s in this deck just because Rising Nova is based on taking the abilities of our grade 3 rearguards, and they're usually Vanguard abilities. So all of the grade 3s that we run in this deck have Vanguard abilities, so no matter what you ride, you will be able to do something on Vanguard, so at least that's cool. But you ideally want to ride Rising Nova all the time. So let's talk about Rising Nova's 2 abilities. So we have, first of all, we have 4. Exceptional Expertise Rising Nova. Its 2 abilities is, the first one is a continuous ability that says when this unit is placed by riding and would get an imaginary gift Force, then you can get both 1 and 2 instead of 1 or 2. So basically you get to get an imaginary gift Force 1, which gives you plus 10k to a circle, and then you get an imaginary gift Force 2, which gives you permanent plus 1 crit to a circle. So that's very, very important, especially I will talk about some of the strategies and techniques that you guys can use when using this. But I think pretty much the first Rising Nova ride is pretty good with Bull Spike and its moving abilities. And then secondary onwards is pretty good with like Siegfried, Spiking Cyclone, and so on and so forth. So just kind of set up your board the right way, and then you will always be in a favorable position with this card's ability. So its second ability, which is a Vanguard Axe skill, says Soul Blast 1, and then you choose up to 2 of your grade 3 rearguards, and this unit gets all of their abilities until the end of the turn. This ability may only be used once per turn by a card with the same card name. I guess they did that to prevent you from playing a Rising Nova on rearguard and then getting the Rising Nova on rearguard's ability and then using it to spam copy Vanguard abilities, and that would be broken, I guess. So they just stopped it by doing that. Moving on to our next grade 3, we have 3 Dead Heat Bull Spike. So what Bull Spike does is, first of all, on your Vanguard circle, when your unit attacks, you may Soul Blast 1 and then move all of your Force markers to that unit's circle. So pretty simplistic, pretty easy. You get to move around your Force markers, and this also comes into play super effectively when you're running it with alongside Rising Nova, because with Rising Nova getting Force 1 and Force 2, you get to move, you know, at least for that first ride, it's very effective that you're moving a Force 1 and a Force 2 alongside your circles, because you don't want to do it later in the game when you've done Rising Nova twice, because then all of your Force 2 will go to one circle, and even though your Force 1 will stack on the same circle, your Force 2 will not. So I would not suggest using it after the second ride of Rising Nova. But however, it's still good to copy its ability for the second skill, which is when the attack of your unit on a circle with a force marker does not hit, then you get to draw a card and choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So also, if you still two bull spike skills, which is something that I like to do, is if your attack doesn't hit, then you get to draw 2 and retire 2 of your choice. So that's very, very good as well. Moving on to our next grade 3 in the deck, we have 3 General Siegfried. So what General Siegfried does on the Vanguard circle is basically it has an activation skill that says counterboss 1 and put one of your rear guards into your soul. You get to search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as the card that you put into the soul for the cost, and then you can call it to rear guard circle, and to the end of the turn, this unit and that unit get plus 10,000 power and shuffle your deck. So basically, if you set up for doing this card on the second grade 3 turn skill, then you can put force 2 to both of your rear guard columns, and that will probably put your opponent in range to die. And so basically you leave your Vanguard as the only one without a force 2, and so then it makes them take the attack of General Siegfried or the Rising Nova with General Siegfried's skill in it, and then you get to use the second skill, which is when its attack hits, you can soul loss 2, restand one of your rear guards, and then choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So you basically get to restand your attack and then just attack again with that big crit column. So very, very, very solid combo to do there. Then we have 2 Spiking Cyclone to round out our grade 3 lineup. So Spiking Cyclone, what it does is it has 2 Vanguard abilities just like all the other cards. So basically the first Vanguard ability is during your turn, this unit gets plus 5,000 power for each force marker on your circle. So again, when you're using this card, you're giving your Vanguard plus 10k, plus 20k, depending on how many force markers you have. If you've rode Rising Nova twice, you'll be getting plus 20k, and if you ride Rising Nova once, you'll be getting plus 10k, because both force markers count towards this card's skill. Then its secondary ability is when it attacks on the Vanguard circle, you can counterboss 1 and restand one of your rear guards. So basically, Spiking Cyclone, if you don't have access to Soul for Siegfried, you can definitely just use Spiking Cyclone instead to set up for that restand with a Counter Blast instead of a Soul Blast 2. Moving on to our grade 2s of the deck, we have 4 Adorbs Palm Rona. I really want to just call her Rona, so we're just going to call her Rona, okay? Rona's Vanguard and Rearguard ability is when placed on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, counterboss 1 and search your deck for up to 1 grade 3 card, call it to Rearguard and shuffle your deck. So this can get you in the early game like a free +1, and it also gets you into those grade 3s pretty early. Also, it can like threaten your opponent in a way, because if you place the grade 3 on the board in the front row, it kind of tempts your opponent to attack into it because they think that you need it and they don't want to deal with Rising Nova copying that ability. So a lot of times, there's been a lot of times where I played this deck and I've called a card out from this that I don't necessarily need at all, and then my opponent attacks into it with a semi-big attack or attack that they could have just hit on my Vanguard when, you know, they just want to get rid of the grade 3 instead. So we definitely take that. We take those all times and all days of every second of the week, basically. We always want to let a useless rearguard go in exchange for having to take a Vanguard damage. So yeah, definitely do that. And if your opponent attacks into it, that's great for you. And then on the rearguard circle, it has another ability that says if you have a grade 3 unit in the same column as this unit gets boost. So it's kind of like Star Call Trumpeter in MLB. So kind of like that, where you get to boost, but you just have to have a grade 3 in the same column as it, instead of like a Vanguard grade 3 or something like that. So then we run 4 Breach Spurt as our next grade 2. This grade 2 is really, really good in my opinion because it's really, really synergetic with Wonder Boy. So Wonder Boy can put back anything that's not a grade 1 from your drop zone to deck. And then this card can actually put back any normal unit from drop zone to deck. So you can actually recycle your Wonder Boys with this if you want to. But it has great synergy with Wonder Boy. So when it attacks the Vanguard, you can put a normal unit from the drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and then until the end of the battle, your opponent's units must intercept. So you force them to intercept as well, which can be really good because when you make the exact perfect numbers, when your opponent intercepts, it won't be enough, and sometimes they have to overguard you and lose their intercepts at the same time. And then at the end of the battle, you put this unit to your soul, and then you draw a card. So you get hand advantage and soul to be able to fuel your effects like General Siegfried, Rising Nova, etc. Then for our last grade 2 that we're running in the deck, we're running 2 Assaulting Barbarius. So Assaulting Barbarius says that on the Guardian Circle, this unit gets plus 5,000 shield for each force marker on your circles. So we pretty much just hold this card in hand. We don't really play it down because I don't want someone with a control deck to just blow it or attack into it. So we basically just hold this in our hands, and because we run so many grade 3s, we run some additional Guardian power in our grade 2 lineup because of, you know, how many grade 3s we have in the deck. Then moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Ambush Dexter. Ambush Dexter has 2 card abilities. The first one is a Vanguard ability that says when placed, discard a card from your hand and then draw a card. So this is really good when you go second. You get to discard that quick shield ticket and draw a card, which can be really, very good. And then its second ability, which is when placed on the rearguard circle, counterboss 1 and put a grade 2 or greater rearguard into your soul. Then you can search your deck for up to 2 cards with the same grade as that card. Put them into your soul for this cost, and then you call them to rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. So I guess that is so that they won't count as being called from deck or something like that. But it's very interesting. Oh yeah. So basically, sorry, I read the card all wrong. It does the same thing that I effectively just said that it does, but it basically just calls out, you know, if you put this card on the board, you counterboss 1, you shove a grade 3 into your soul, you're allowed to get 2 other grade 3s, and that allows you to switch out your grade 3s. So if you no longer want to copy Dead Heat Bull Spike on the rearguard circle, then you can shove it in and go for General Siegfried and Spiking Cyclone instead, and copy their skills. And so it's very, very useful in that way. It allows you to switch out your targets. Or if you only have 1 target, it allows you to turn 1 target into 2, which can be good as well. Then for our next grade 1, we have 4 Acrobat Verdi. This is our old school stride fodder, or our new V-Series top 5 for a grade 3. So basically it's Vanguard rearguard circles, has 2 skills. So the first one is if a rearguard was called by your card's ability this turn, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So plus 5,000 power can easily make it a 13k attacker or booster. So pretty easy there. And this deck already makes big columns with big numbers. So even if you play this card down as 13, if that circle has a force marker, a force 1 and a force 2, then it'll be 23k with 2 crits. So that's very, very good just for a 1 card committance, something like that. I can't think of the word that I mean. But its second skill is when placed from hand, look at the top 5 cards from your deck. Reveal up to 1 grade 3 card from among them, put into your hand, shuffle your deck, and then if you put a card, discard a card. So this card is obviously very, very much more potent than the other ones of its same kind in the other clans, because we run more grade 3s in this build than normal. So you have more chance to find it with Acrobat Verdi off the top 5. Then for our last grade 1 in the deck, we run 3 Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy has 2 rearguard abilities. The first one is when placed on the rearguard circle, you can put a card other than a grade 1 from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck, which means that you can recycle triggers with this card, which makes it very, very solid. And then this unit gets plus 5,000 power, so it can become a 13k attacker or booster for the cost, the low free cost of putting something back from your drop zone. And then at the beginning of your main phase, if it's on the rearguard circle, you can put into your soul and then search your deck for up to 1 Wonder Boy, call it, and shuffle your deck, and that allows you to basically just reuse the recycle skill. So that's very, very good as well. It also fuels your soul for your soul blast abilities like we were talking about before, General Siegfried, Rising Nova, etc. Then for our starter, we will have 1 Running Sniper, which does what every other starter in the game basically does, which is when rode upon, draw a card, and then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, then you get a quick shield ticket into your hand. So you have a couple effects that allow you to discard in this deck. So yeah, you can just use your quick shield ticket for it, or just use your quick shield for an additional little shield value. Then for our triggers, we run 5 crit, 6 crit, wait, no. 5 crit, 7 draw, 4 heal. Sorry guys, I run so many different ones that I confused myself, and that's actually the point of running all these different triggers, is to confuse your opponent so they don't know what kind of lineup you're running. So we have 2 Kill Parade Mavis, 2 Silence Joker, 1 Sonic Breaker, and then 4 Cheer Girl Marilyn, which is our Spike Brother Draw Trigger Sentinel. Then we have 2 Cheer Girl Pauline, 1 Cheerful Lynx, and 4 Cheer Girl Adelaide, the ugliest card to ever exist in Cardfight Vanguard. Yeah, I'm not gonna say much more than that, but we're gonna go for our games here. So for game 1, we're playing against the new Great Nature deck. This looks like it's the Big Belly deck. So our opponent goes into Mini Belly for grade 1 turn, checks top 5, and does not get the target for the skill. We go into Wonder Boy and we attack for 8. Our opponent takes it. We get a Bull Spike, and then our opponent rides and attacks for 9. We take it. because we want a counterblast to be able to use Rona. So we use Rona to call a Bull Spike, and this is just our setup. As you guys can see, we already have 2 Bull Spikes in our hand. So if our opponent destroys this Bull Spike, like I said in the deck portion, we don't really care. I did want to get that Acrobat Verde off so I could use Breach Spurt, but it doesn't really matter. We can just use it in future turns. So we attack a Vanguard for 23, we hit a draw trigger, and then we attack for 23, and that gets blocked. So our opponent goes for playing Famous Professor Big Belly, and actually goes for a Hamdon and Geograph Giant combo, which is actually very, very smart to be able to use Big Belly like to its full extent right off the bat by putting a grade 3 from Hand into Soul. So that's something that I never thought about with that build. So that's pretty cool that our opponent incorporated that. And then he decides to play it on a board. So we get attacked for 17 into our rear guard. So like I said, this is a perfect example of what I said about your opponent thinking that your rear guards are important. So here's where we're going to guard this, because we're going to make our opponent think that it's important to us. So we guard it with a 5k, which is very low commitment. And then our Bushwhack retires and gives 10k to something. And then he attacks for 32 into our rear guard. So we take it anyways, and that's an attack that could have hit us on Vanguard that we just was able to take on the rear guard instead. So our opponent attacks Vanguard, attacks rear guard and then checks no triggers. And so we take the damage off the rear guards. And then I was trying to tell him that he couldn't draw 2. For some reason, every Great Nature player that I play against thinks that Bushbeck, when it retires during the battle phase, you're supposed to draw during the end phase for it, but you don't. You're supposed to draw from Big Belly right at the point that the retire happens. So basically, he just puts that 1 card back, which was the heal trigger, and then he shuffles. And then we ride into Rising Nova. We get a Force 1 and a Force 2, putting it on the Vanguard circle. Then we call a Breach Spurt and a Dead Heat Bull Spike. And basically, I would have used Ambush Dexter to call another Bull Spike, but we only run 3, and obviously one of them already got destroyed, so we just decided to play it down as a booster, and we use the Rising Nova skill to take the Bull Spike skills. So we attack for 36 to crit. Our opponent PGs that. We check a critical trigger, and we put it all to Breach Spurt. And then we use Bull Spike skill, double skill, to draw 2 and retire 2, so we retired 2 of his intercepts. And then we use the skill of Bull Spike to Soul Blast 1 and move our force markers over to the Breach Spurt column. And we attack for 38, 3 crit, and our opponent just can't guard it. And because of that, he just loses the game right there. So, like I said, very high pressure, very high critical. It's kind of like MLB, but it works a little bit different. And yeah, overall, I think it's a very solid deck from the games that I played with it so far. So then game 2, we're playing against Great Nature again. This time we're going first. So we ride Wonder Boy, we draw a card. Our opponent rides Mouse Toby, and we no guard it, and then he draws a card off of Mouse Toby's skill. We go for Counterblast 1 with the Rona to call a Bull Spike once again. We already have 1 Bull Spike and a Siegfried, so again, we have good setup already. We attack Vanguard, he no guards, and we hit a crit, and then he blocks with a heal for our last rear guard. So then he rides Full Mary and plays Mouse Toby, then plays Fossa. And we made him draw from the bottom for Fossa, because Fossa is supposed to put the other card into the drop zone. So that card goes to drop zone now. And then he plays another Full Mary and a Bushbeck. So he attacks into our rear guard again with that bait. So we just basically no guard it, because, you know, we're letting our opponent have it anyways. It's not really important. Then we guard this rear guard, and then this other unit can't hit. So we get our Force 1 and Force 2 to Vanguard circle. And we actually move it to the rear guard circle, because I was thinking about the way that I wanted to do things, and this is the way that I wanted to do it, basically. So we go for Rising Nova skill to Soul Blast 1, and it gets General Siegfried skill and Bull Spike skill. So we attack for 23 to crit. Our opponent takes the damage and hits a draw trigger on defensive. And then we use the Soul Blast 1 to move our markers. So our opponent guards for a 2 to pass. We don't get it, but we do hit a heal trigger. And then we use Bull Spike to draw a card and retire his Fossa. And then we attack for 33, which he has to guard with a significant amount of shield from his hand. So he draws a draw PG for turn, which is actually very good on his part. And then he also draws a Hamdon, which he would not have had right there if he didn't do that. So very good for him. And he also has that grade 3 to be able to get his combo off as well. So all those pieces that our opponent just happened to have, but it's all cool. It's all good. So our opponent attacks 27 to our rear guard. We definitely don't care about that. Our opponent retires Bushbeck, gives plus 10k to a unit, and draws off of Big Belly. Attacks our rear guard for 22, then attacks our Vanguard for 32, then attacks our Vanguard for 30. We no guard. Our opponent doesn't hit any triggers. Then we no guard the 22, or sorry, we block the 22 with Assaulting Barriers, and then we decided to take the remaining 2 attacks because they're bigger. So we ride another Rising Nova, and we go for playing the Force 1 and the Force 2 on the other side. So both of our rear guard columns in the front row have 2 crit, and we decided to just go for a double Breach Spurt for a plus turn. So we attacked for 13k to our opponent's Vanguard, and our opponent wanted to guard it because he definitely doesn't want to get crit, because he doesn't know how many crits we run, but he has seen crits this game. And that's why I said that it's important to basically run those different amounts of crits so your opponent doesn't know how many you run. But we plus a lot off of using the Breach Spurts and drive checks, and we also burned a little bit of advantage out of our opponent, while also not giving him any new counterblast to use. So our opponent plays Spool Mary and Fossa from hand, attacks us for 24, which we take, and we hit a draw trigger. And once I saw that we hit that draw trigger on defense, I was like, oh, it's all over for my opponent anyways, because not only were we going to survive initially anyways, but like this makes it super duper easy to survive. So we actually 2 to pass his Vanguard, and he gets a front trigger, and I almost died, because if that second card was a trigger, he would have bypassed my attack. So we guard the remaining 2 rear guards. He draws 2. And then for turn, we could have rode this Rising Nova, but I wanted to get 2 grade 3s out, so I instead go for calling it, and then I go for Ambush Dexter to get 2 grade 3s. So I get General Siegfried and Bull Spike, calling them out. And then I Soul Blast to gain the skills of the 2 grade 3s. And then I use the Vanguard skill of Siegfried to counterblast 1, put into Soul, and get another one. But I didn't realize that I didn't have one in my deck. But I did have a Bull Spike, so I just use it on Bull Spike instead, which is, you know, kind of essentially the same thing. We check top 5 with Acrobat Viridian. We do not get a grade 3. Acrobat Viridian gets 5k. Then we attack with Breach, and then we use the skill, which makes him have to intercept. And you guys can see that he guarded with a 10k here, so he overguarded actually. And so basically the only option here for our opponent is that he would have to block Bull Spike, and then he would have to take Vanguard, but then when Vanguard hits, Bull Spike would restand anyways. So either way, he was going to have to take this 2 crit attack, and that's what led to him dying anyways. And then for our last game here, we have Rising Nova 3. So it seems like we're playing against Shadow Paladin, which is Luard, it looks like. And then our opponent rides Deliat. Our opponent goes first, so that's something that you always want to be careful of when opponent is playing Luard. But we do get a crit in the early game, so that's pretty cool. That starts us off really well. So our opponent uses Leafall to call Sharon, then uses Abyssal Owl twice to draw 2. And then attacks for 15, he hits a Leafall. On damage, we hit a Breach Spurt. And then we guard the rear guard because we want to stay at low damage against this deck. We go for Verona, and we call out Bull Spike, and then we call out Acrobat Viridian top 5 for a grade 3, and we get into our Rising Nova, which is really good. Then we discard our Cyclone, we check top 5 again, and then we get a Bull Spike. So now we're discarding our Siegfried because we want to keep our double Bull Spike play for the first grade 3 turn. And then we attack for 23 to our opponent's Vanguard. We don't hit any triggers. Our opponent damage checks a Drag Driver and another Drag Driver, which is unfortunate because he didn't have a grade 3. So then he G-assists and does not get the grade 3. So now we're actually in a very favorable position because of our opponent's low grade 3 count that they run. So our opponent plays Leafall, calls out Abyssal Owl, counterblast 1, draws a card. Attacks for 15 to our rear guard, which is a bait, like I said. So we let it go. And then our opponent attacks us for 25, and we take it. We hit a damage trigger, so this 13 can attack us. And then we go for Rising Nova. We get a Force 1 and Force 2 to Vanguard Circle. And then we call out double Bull Spike, and we use Rising Nova skill to Soul Blast and get both skills of the Bull Spikes. And then we attack for 31 to crit to our opponent's Vanguard. Our opponent guards for a 2 to pass. We do get a heal trigger, but we do not heal. We put it on the rear guard. And then we used Bull Spike skill to draw 2 and retire 2. We use Bull Spike Soul Blast skill to move our markers. So we attack for 33. Our opponent has to block with 2 cards there. Then we move our markers one more time. And then we attack for 31 to crit as well. And our opponent has to guard with a significant amount of guard. So our opponent G-assists with the 4 cards in his hand. On the very last card gets a Dragheart Luard for himself to be able to use. And then he has to remove 2 cards from his hand from the game. And then he decides to go Force 2, I guess because he was trying to end it in this turn because he realized that he wasn't going to be able to survive past this turn. So our opponent went Force 2, uses the skill of Vanguard to put back 2 normal units, and then he Superior Rides into Drag Driver. Drag Driver is able to counterblast 1 and search for 2 Grade 1 units, which he uses to call Sharon and then Morfessa. And since he has the Souls in his hand, he wanted to make a 5 rear guard grade 1, board so that Morfessa can use its skill. And then he also wanted to give counterblast with Sharon. So he does all that, and then he attacks us for 43 to crit. I PG that because I do not want him checking a crit and winning the game, which he would have done definitely. So he checks a crit and a Luard, which tells us that his defense next turn is going to be pretty bad. And then he attacks us with the with the Morfessa for 2 crit. And then he attacks us for 28, which we block. And then he attacks us for 31, which we block as well. So then the next turn after that, we end up playing Ambush Dexter. We use Ambush Dexter skill because we did not have a soul to shove one of our Bull Spikes in. And then we just got a Siegfried out. So now we use Rising Nova skill to Soul Blast that Bull Spike out and then get the skill of Siegfried and Bull Spike. So we use Siegfried skill to counterblast 1, get another Siegfried out, it gets 10k, and then our Acrobat Verdes are triggered as well, so they get +5. And then we do the same kind of finishing play that we tried to do in the last game, which is we attack for 46, then we attack for 21, which our opponent has to take, and then we retired a card, and then we attack with Vanguard, and we use the Soul Blast to move our triggers because of the Bull Spike skill. So we have a double crit on our Vanguard circle, and our opponent is forced to take it and therefore dies. But yes, that has been the FutureFight Vanguard video for Rising Nova Spike Brothers. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like the video, comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the build or your own build, like what kind of things are you working with. Personally, my favorite tech card for this build was the grade 2 because it saved me in a lot of games with the shield value, so that was my favorite thing about this build. And yeah, other than that, be sure to check out my second channel down below, Let's Plays Anime, is in the description if you're into anime, animation, or video games. And last but not least, check out that join button if you're interested in becoming a Cardfight channel member. But with that being said, this has been Josh from CardfighterEmpire, and I'll see you guys on the next video.